think I'm going to go ahead and get started. If that's okay.
Excuse me, Board Member Firestone. We're having an issue with the webcast right now, so they're asking us to hold on for about 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And Margie or Courtney, maybe if one of you can throw up a splash screen just to alert folks who may join late. We are streaming out on YouTube also, and that will at least give folks there a heads up that we'll be starting a few moments late. Janine, did the AV folks need us to do a mic check so they can make sure sound is coming through on the Cali?
I already did the check, and we are actually good to go. I just got the okay.
Okay, terrific.
So it's Amanda, we're good to go.
Okay, I think we'll get started. Good morning and welcome to this workshop on the California Water and Wastewater Arrearage Payment Program. This workshop is being webcasted and recorded and will be made available online for those who cannot watch it with us today. My name is Laurel Firestone, and I wanted to introduce my fellow board members here today. Board member Sean McGuire and board member Nicole Morgan are here. And I believe board chair Joaquin Esquivel may be joined or maybe here currently, and I think Vice Chair Diadamo will be joining for part of this. Unfortunately, both Chair Esquivel and Vice Chair Diadamo are going to have to be coming in and out, so they asked me to run the workshop today. This workshop is being held in accordance with the revised public notice dated August 26, 2021. As a workshop, the board will not take any formal action. However, the board members may ask clarifying questions of the speakers, and after receiving updates and comments at this workshop, the board may provide direction to staff regarding future tasks or actions. The purpose of today's workshop is for the board to hear comments on the draft guidelines for the California Water and Wastewater Arrearage Relief Program. About this time last year, this board directed staff to collect data to characterize the statewide impacts of COVID-19 pandemic to household water debt and to small system financial viability. We knew that unprecedented numbers of households were incurring extreme and rising water debt burden during the duration of the emergency. And we knew based on national studies that these impacts are disproportionately hurting Black and Brown communities. In partnership with water associations, water agencies, environmental justice groups, many of whom are here today, we developed a survey that provided the California-specific realities of this quickly mounting water crisis so that as a state, we could act before systems and households are subject to severe consequences. So today, because of the leadership of the groups represented here today, the staff that work to collect and analyze data, the state leadership from our legislature and our governor, we now have the opportunity to provide the largest water consumer debt forgiveness program in the country. The funding through this program will acutely impact the lives of more than 1 million Californians that have been decimated financially in this pandemic. Our task today is to make sure that we do justice to this opportunity and responsibility. Today's workshop will begin with staff presentations from the State Water Board that summarizes the draft guidelines and enacting statutes. Following the staff presentation, we'll hear presentations from 10 additional groups who requested to make presentations as part of 2 different panels. The first panel will be environmental justice and community representatives, and the second will be water associations and utility groups. Following the panels, we'll provide opportunity for public comment. For those that will be providing oral comments, please state your name and, if relevant, the organization you represent prior to providing your comments. Public comments will occur based on the order of virtual comment cards received. Instructions for completing a virtual speaker card were provided in the board meeting notice and should have been submitted prior to the start of the workshop. However, if you were not aware of these instructions, you can still participate by emailing commentletters@waterboards.ca.gov now to request to complete a virtual speaker card and receive a Zoom link and password. You will not be able to speak in this workshop until you receive the Zoom link and password. In order to ensure that all participants have an opportunity to participate, oral comments may be subject to time limits. So before we get started with the staff and agency and other presentations, we wanted to offer the opportunity for any elected or tribal officials that would like to provide comment. Board Clerk, did we have any elected or tribal officials that submitted a virtual comment card that would like to speak?
No, we do not.
Great. With that, I'll turn it over to the staff presentation, starting with Leslie Lawden, our previous Deputy Director for the Board's Division of Financial Assistance, and Darren Palamas, the Deputy Director for the Board's Division of Drinking Water and assisting staff.
Well, great, thank you. And good morning, board members and other participants. I'm Leslie Lawden, as board member Firestone mentioned, former Deputy Director of the Division of Financial Assistance. And I'm currently staying on to help get this program off the ground. And I have to say that in my 30 years with the Water Board, this is the largest and fastest program that we've ever initiated. And so we really appreciate everybody's participation here to make sure that we get it right. Many staff within the Division of Financial Assistance and the Division of Drinking Water have been working on this program behind the scenes. Some of them are on here today to help with any questions that may come up. I particularly wanted to recognize Kristen Abhold from the Division of Drinking Water, Salika Potter from DFA, Ann Hartridge and Julie Osborne from our Chief Counsel's office. They've just been invaluable in helping us. So I'm going to go through the details of the program, and Darren will hop in if I skip anything. So could I have the next slide, please? First, I would like to cover the program requirements of the State Water Board, and then I'll be going through the requirements for the participating water systems. So I think most people know we have $985 million available to cover residential and commercial water arrearages that occurred during the COVID-19 relief bill period. And that period is March 4th of 2020 through June 15th of 2021. The statutes say that within 90 days of the passage of the budget trailer bill, we need to survey the community water systems to establish the total statewide need. And then the board must adopt program guidelines. And so we have the draft out for public comment, as board member Firestone indicated. We need to use those survey results to determine the proportional allocation to the participating community water systems and include that in the final program guidelines. And then we will be making one-time payments to the participating community water systems. And so it's important to note that customers do not need to apply to this program. The payments will be going to the water systems. Next slide. We need to open up our application within 14 days of the board adopting the guidelines and begin making payments by November 1st of this year. We need to complete the payments by January 31st of 2022. We are going to be prioritizing the timing of the disbursement payments to small water systems first. And then if we don't use all of the funds for drinking water arrearages, we need to run a wastewater arrearage program and begin that program by February 1st, 2022. Next. Community water systems, regardless of size, that charge for water are eligible for the program. The water systems must have residential or commercial arrearages that accrued during that time period of March 4th, 2020 through June 15th of 2021. And systems that transferred or sold the water arrearage debt are eligible to participate in the program. And as I mentioned, we are currently surveying the community water systems to determine the statewide need for the program. And on the next slide, I'm going to show some information, the latest stats that we have on the survey. So could we have the next slide? So as of yesterday, 1,936 or 67% of the 2,872 community water systems that were asked to complete the survey have started it. And 48% or 1,383 have completed it. And 573 systems that charge for water have not started the survey. And I want to stress that it's really critical that water systems complete the survey so that we have complete and accurate data on which to establish our total statewide need and the allocation to the individual systems. So
and Leslie, I would add that we've made direct contact with 87% of the water systems. That's 2,495 have been touched by our staff at some level.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Next slide, please. As Darren was jumping in, getting ahead of me on the slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So the Division of Drinking Water has really redirected quite a number of staff and established 2 full units of staff that are doing outreach and technical assistance with the survey. Our district staff and the local primacy agency staff have been helping with that outreach too. And as Darren mentioned, they've contacted over 2,400 of the water systems. With the help of the Rural Community Assistance Corporation, or RCAC, we held 3 virtual workshops and 1 brown bag format Q&A session. We have assigned 70 technical assistance requests that our TA providers are helping with. And self-help, RCAC and CRWA are also directly doing outreach with the systems that they work with. So survey deadline is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So please, everyone, get your surveys in. Next slide. Okay, so once we have the survey results, the Division of Drinking Water staff are going to be crunching the numbers and calculate the total statewide residential and commercial arrearages. Staff will use those results from those that responded to estimate arrearages for systems that didn't respond. And it's important to note that we will not be including late fees and interest as part of those arrearage calculations. If we have enough money to cover the total need, the water systems would get 100% of their requests and be able to credit 100% of the arrearages to the customers. If the need is greater than the available funding, we will be allocating the money proportionally based on the total need. And we do plan to hold some funds back for systems that have late applications, but want to note that funding is not guaranteed for those systems. Next slide. So now I'd like to cover the requirements for the water systems. So all community water systems, whether or not they participate in our arrearage payment program, and regardless of their size, have to offer payment plans to customers with arrearages. And these payment plans have to comply with the requirements of the Water Shutoff Protection Act. And some of those requirements are having policies and notices in English and languages spoke by 10% or more of their customers, having mechanisms for customers to contest or appeal a bill, and a telephone number for customers to contact. And then water systems cannot shut off water service before September 30th, 2021, or until a customer enrolled in a payment plan defaults on that plan. Service can be shut off after September 30th if a customer with debt chooses not to enroll in a payment plan within 30 days. Next slide. So water systems that receive funds must credit the accounts of their customers within 60 days of receiving the funds. And this includes water systems that have transferred or sold the debt. Systems must notify the customers of the credits. They must waive late fees and interest, and also auto-enroll customers with remaining balances and payment plans with a repayment period of at least 12 months. Need to allow customers 30 days to opt out of the payment plan, and again, follow the requirements of the Water Shutoff Protection Act. Also refer low-income customers to other assistance programs to help with any remaining debt. And then any funds that are not credited to customer accounts or used by the water system for program administration must be returned to the water board within 6 months. Next. Water systems may apply to be reimbursed for their costs to apply for and administer the program. These costs are capped at 3% of their allocation or $1 million. And if we have enough funding to cover the total arrearages, the water systems, as I mentioned, will credit 100% of the arrearages to the customers. If we don't have enough funding to cover the full amount, the draft guidelines recommend that water systems establish a tiered system for credits. So tier 1 would include customers with the highest arrearages and low income customers. Tier 2 would be residential customers with moderate arrearages. Tier 3 includes the remaining residential customers, and Tier 4 is commercial customers. And systems that adopt or use this type of a tiered approach would provide 100% debt relief for each tier before providing debt relief to the next tier. And we haven't set like numbers for these tiers because it's going to depend on each water system and the types of arrearages that they have. But we will have technical assistance available to help water systems establish those tiers. Next. We're trying to make the application as simple as possible, but there are certain forms that we require in order to make payments to the systems. The first is the payee data record, or Form 204, and we have been asking water systems for a couple months to send us those forms so that we can get started on entering the systems into the state's accounting system. And so far, we've only collected about 450 forms, so not a great return rate. So again, another plea, please get your forms in so that we can get to work on getting the information entered into the state system. The rest of the application will be basically an application form that identifies the maximum amount that the system can apply for. Systems may request less than the maximum amount on that form, and then the form must be signed by the water system's authorized representative or designee. Then there'll be another form, which is called the Conditions of Payment form, and that'll list the program requirements that also need to be signed by the authorized representative. And then large systems will supply documentation to support their claimed arrearages. And our applications are going to be due by December 6th of 2021. Next slide. For systems that combine water charges with other services, the drinking water relation portion of the arrearage is eligible for reimbursement. And water service cannot be shut off for arrearages for the other services that accrued during that relief period. And also, if systems don't have specific accounting of the arrearages for the different services, we can use an average annual percentage calculation, and that is described in the guidelines. Next. And finally, after the payments and the credits are made, the participating water systems will be required to report back to the State Water Board. Again, we're trying to make this as streamlined and easy as we can. We will provide the template for reporting. It includes those data points shown on the slide, the accounts credited, the number enrolled in payments plan, and those that opt out. Also, some backup documentation for any administration costs that are claimed. And then we will require that the backup documentation be provided at the request of water board staff and retained for 7 years in case of audits. So next slide. We have been coordinating in the development of our program and sharing data with other agencies, including the California Public Utilities Commission, Department of Community Services and Development, and the Consumer Services and Housing agencies, to make sure that our programs are coordinated and we're using similar types of definitions for their programs too. Next slide. As I mentioned, this has been a whirlwind program and development. So here is the timeline for the program development. The bill was signed on July 22nd. The water system survey opened on August 11th, and it closes tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We held webinars on August 19th and 2 on the 26th. We released the draft guidelines on August 25th. We're having the board workshop today. And the surveys are due tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and comments on the draft guidelines are due tomorrow at noon. The board meeting to consider the guidelines will be September 21st or 22nd. We'll open the application on October 5th or 6th and start payments by November 1st, close the application December 6th, and complete payments by January 31st. So I just wanted to mention that in between the close of the comment period tomorrow, and we will be crunching those numbers on the survey. We'll be updating the draft guidelines. So a revised draft will be published before the board meeting, because we will be making changes in response to these comments and also updating with those total arrearage amounts and the allocation amounts from the survey. Next slide. So finally, here are links to resources for the program. We have a website, an arrearages program website at the address that's listed there on the top. And we have a dedicated email address and phone line for questions, and our staff are monitor that and respond to those questions as they come in. And we have technical assistance both from our staff and also through our third-party technical assistance providers. There's a form on our website. If you click on that link there, which is also on the arrearage program website, there's a form to fill out to request technical assistance. And next slide. And that concludes the staff presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions or move on to the panels, or if Darren has anything to add, or anyone else. Thank you.
Great. Darren, did you want to add anything?
No, Leslie did an outstanding job covering everything. Really appreciate it. I just emphasize how fast this program has been, and we do look forward to the comments from everybody today. I know the guidelines were put out quickly, and you know, they are a first draft, and we are quickly drafting, so it'll be important to listen today.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And I also wanted to just start by giving a huge thanks to everyone that's been working behind the scenes here at the board, and the technical assistance providers and all the water systems around the state that are working hard to fill out the survey and to make this program happen, help us get it right. And I've really been so impressed with how we've been working creatively to really reduce the time and administrative work to the extent we can, as much as possible for this program. It's really an unprecedented scale and sprint for the development and deployment of this critical program. I don't think any of us take that lightly, the huge amount of work involved. So do board members have any comments or questions before we move to public panels?
Yeah, I just had a quick clarifying question, and obviously just second all those kudos. Really amazing how much you've accomplished in a very short amount of time, and still a lot of work to do, but just very impressed with how we've gotten to this point so fast. And my question is just seeing the results of the survey. It looks like there's quite a number of water systems that still they have about a day here to finish their survey. And so just to clarify, is that a prerequisite for funding eligibility? Or if some water systems, for whatever reason, aren't able to complete their survey, would they still be eligible for funding later? So just help me understand that. Thanks.
Yeah, I can go for that. So we are closing the survey. That will allow us to establish the funding component as to whether there's enough funds to give everybody 100%, or if we're underfunded and we have to establish in the guidelines a percentage of coverage as a proportional amount per the TBO. After that, we are planning to suggest to the board hold some funding in reserve for those that were unable to complete it. We have several water systems on TA assistance to try to get their information together. We will reopen the survey because they still have to complete the survey individually for those systems that do apply late, but that's not going to go on forever. I forget the date Leslie had up there, but there will be a cutoff. I think it was December 6th. If we can't get someone handled before then they will not be in this program.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions from board members? All right, I have a question. So do we, again, I know our staff is going to be crunching these numbers. Do we have a sense of whether the large systems have submitted data so far? And do we feel like we can speculate whether we think the funding that we have will be sufficient to cover the magnitude of debt on drinking water in the state?
So I'm going to give you rough numbers. I'm switched over to a different screen here to look at it. I want to call out William Allen. He worked late into the night to crunch these numbers, anticipating that you may ask this question. At the moment, of the large water systems that have applied, we have 171 that have sent in data. We have 147 that have also started. So there's a pretty large number yet to have enter in. At the moment, I'm a bit surprised, but we only have $129 million of arrearages reported from all size systems. I find that to be rather small. I think a lot of systems are waiting until today and tomorrow to complete their survey. We definitely want to encourage them to do that. So obviously that number would have to go up dramatically to not be 100%. And maybe that's an incentive to water systems that at this moment, if you get in, and even if you add yours to this, you're going to get 100% payment on the arrearages that you request. So don't dilly-dally. Don't crash our system at 4:55 on Friday either. Certainly, hopefully tomorrow, if you're waiting until the last minute. And I know some systems are waiting to the last minute to make sure they get as many people in as they can because of a decision we had made about arrearages needing to be 60 days late to be eligible, and they're letting that time clock run out on as many systems as many customers as they can, and that's certainly we appreciate them making sure that they add as many customers and as much arrearages as they're possible to do. So that's where we stand at the moment.
Great. Okay. And thank you for staff working to have those numbers available today. Sounds like we still have a lot to go, but also encouraging that we may be able to cover 100%. All right. I know, we have a lot of folks here today that can also be helpful in really trying to support getting those numbers in. So we'll now move to the public panels, and then we'll have a break. And after the break, we'll reconvene for public comments. And Amanda Ford, I believe you're facilitating the public panels and public comments. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Board Member Firestone. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda with State Water Board's Office of Public Participation, and I'm just going to be here today to co-host the panelists. So the first panel we have is the EJ and Community panel. You can see the names rolling on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone at once. And then you guys can sort out which order you'd like to go in. We have Crystal Gonzalez from Clean Water Action, Tim Prado from Community Water Leadership Network, Brittany Rivas from Los Angeles Alliance for New Economy, Lorena Kim from Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, Natalie Escobedo from Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. We also had Uriel Saldivar from Community Water Center join, and if we have time on the panel, you can join that, or we can get your comment after the panelists go. So with that, I'll turn it over to our EJ and community panel.
Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah, we're going to be using. So I'm facilitating for our panelists today. So next slide, please. And this is just, we just named everyone, but I just wanted, here's a list of our panelists today. I'll be facilitating. My name is Crystal. Then we will be going to Tim Prado, who's a member of the Community Water Leadership Network, and then Brittany Rivas with a community organizers Lane, and Lorena Kim also with Lane, and Natalie Escobedo with Leadership Council Policy Coordinator. So thank you all for your time today. Next slide, please. And then just to highlight, and as we start our presentation, we want to really, again, highlight again the legislative intent of which will be pretty much summarizing what we'll be discussing during this panel. So again, we want to make sure that these funds are dispersed quickly, and particularly for small community water systems, and definitely prioritize residential water customers and those with high levels of water debt. And you'll see from our panelists this echoed. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it over to Tim Prado, Mr. Prado. Thank you.
Hi, I want to thank the panel for letting me come on board and speak regarding the fast track of this program. Currently, I serve as the director of the Lamont Public Utilities District, which is a mid-sized district. It serves 15,000 people in a low-income area of Kern. We've tried to help our residents find financial help with their debt currently by going through nonprofit county programs, and we feel like they put hurdles on us. And currently, with the debt that we accumulated because of COVID, we don't have no way of helping them financially by just waiting for relief to come in. And my concern is that the program, how it is written, will help us, but we're hoping that it's fast tracked to low income areas like mine, prioritized first, and then prioritize large districts later. Because essentially, if we don't get help, we will have to be turning off the water on some of our residents who all year worked around during the pandemic and never took a break because they're low income and farm workers. And I will pass it on to the next representative on the panel.
Yes, that'll be Lauren or Brittany. Thank you, Mr. Prado.
Thank you. I'll start and then turn it over to Brittany.
Next slide.
Thanks, Crystal. My name is Lorena Kim, and I'm the Water Project Director at the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, where we've been working on this issue with many partners throughout the state and also in the region, given the significant concentration of utility debt in our area for customers of the LADWP, as well as customers of small systems such as those in Southeast LA. As you can see in this map, there's really high concentration of pretty significant levels of debt in the city of LA, as well as in, and for those familiar with the region, especially in communities of color and in working class communities, which is borne out by UCLA research that even when you account for economic differences, the utility debt burden is really concentrated unfairly in communities of color. So we're very excited about the possibilities of this program to be able to help address that burden on California families.
We understand from LEDWP presentations that they have around $800 million in arrears as of the July 31st. This also includes energy and wastewater debt, and they are proposing to apply, they expect to apply for a little over half of that. That means that around half of that may not be eligible to be covered by this program. And so we're very hopeful that that can be addressed. Part of that can be addressed by a subsequent wastewater program, as well as that stark number really underscoring the importance for us of payment plans, which my colleague Brittany will speak to shortly. We've also seen that a lot of the water systems, the small systems in Southeast LA, have not yet participated in this survey, which is concerning to us given the needs of families in that area. And so we want to appreciate the effort of the board to be able to reach out to those small systems and hope they continue to be able to target outreach. And we also are in support of the legislature's trailer bill language that's currently under consideration that would extend the shutoff protections for all water systems until the end of this year. And that will help protect customers of these systems from disconnections, given the pandemic continues to impact people's health and livelihoods, especially given the changes in unemployment insurance that's available to families and the continued crunch on people's household finances. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Brittany, to speak more to some of these key points, and thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Brittany Rivas, and I go by she, her, hers gender pronouns, and I'm calling from unceded Tongva land, and I am the community organizer for the water project at LA Alliance for a New Economy, and I'm happy to be here with all of you. So I would like to first start off by saying that we work with environmental justice community leaders in the city of LA and Southeast LA cities, and have seen that many BIPOC communities have had a difficult situation as they experience this pandemic, balancing their life and livelihoods. So a lot of them have faced high levels of utility debt even prior to the pandemic. And so the pandemic has actually exacerbated the current situation. And Lauren helped paint that stark reality that LADWP customers are currently facing with their utility debt burden. And so this is why our communities throughout California need and deserve payment plans with equitable terms, with realistic scope of consideration of customer circumstances that omit late fees as required by guidelines, automatically enrolling customers in workable plans to be able to prevent disconnections. And I would like to kind of further explain like my experience while working with houseless folks and getting them into permanent supportive housing. At that time, I was able to see how difficult it could be for folks, how difficult and easy it was for folks to, one, accumulate debt, but also transition from the streets into housing. And so during intensive case management sessions, I was able to observe multiple residents have difficulty be set up on short-term payment plans, 6-month to 12-month periods. And so that was really unrealistic to their income circumstances of having like supplemental Social Security income, also known as SSI, which is generally less than, at the time was less than $950 monthly. So ultimately, maybe community members have that some sort of income, maybe they don't, and they have similar low income circumstances. And so it's important that they would not be able to pay like shorter term payment plans. And so we should ultimately set our communities to succeed. We have the chance here with all of you here today at the State Water Resource Control Board to make the difference by ensuring customers have access to equitable payment plans, as mentioned before. And then again, I want to say thank you, State Board, for the strong proposed guidelines on this crucial matter. And then Crystal, if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. Cool. So this image that you see before you was captured at a Repower LA Coalition teach-in back in June. And this was able to bring together community leaders and partners throughout LA County, voicing how $2 billion towards water and energy utility debt relief is critical and a necessary lifeline. It's also a human right. This coalition includes SCOPE, Pacoima Beautiful, PSRLA, IBAW, Green Lining Institute, and NRDC, among others. So what you see before you is like what people expressed, why and how utility debt relief would mean to them. So like some words that pop out to me is water is a human right, dignity, just recovery, healthy communities. And so those are some just like little bits that you could pull from the event that was pretty awesome. And then I just want to like echo that like we should continue to listen to our low income BIPOC and environmental justice communities to determine what a just recovery truly is. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity and all the work on this program. And I'm going to pass it off to Natalie.
Thank you, Brittany.
Hello. Hi,
Go ahead.
can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Sorry about that. I accidentally got disconnected. Would y'all mind going to the next slide, please? All right, so we'd like to go over some major areas of concern and interest in the guidelines themselves. First, we have concerns regarding the debt transfer to tax rolls. While we strongly support the State Water Board's effort to provide relief for those whose debt has been transferred to third parties, such as county property tax rolls and debt collection agencies, we are concerned that the process and debt transfer to third parties is insufficient to provide effective relief to customers, particularly as it relates to debt that has been transferred as property tax liens through teeter plants. For customers with property tax liens, total debt must be paid by December of this year and April of 2022. The State Water Board's proposal to offer credits on water bills for future water bills throughout 2022 won't provide relief in time to meet these deadlines. A way the State Water Board could address this issue is by requiring participating water systems to pay the amount of debt transferred to third parties directly to those third parties on a customer's behalf. We believe this would be the most efficient way to distribute these funds and provide full customer relief before additional payments are due. Second, we want to ensure adequate technical assistance is given to small water systems. As we have stated a number of times, it is critical that small water systems are given sufficient technical assistance to ensure they are able to apply and receive debt relief. We are pleased to see the guidelines include provisions for technical assistance and recommend that the State Water Board provide further assistance to address the reporting requirements. Third, we want the State Water Board to reduce tax liability for customers with high debt rather than avoiding high payments. The State Water Board warns that payments from the debt relief program may create tax liabilities for customers. We are very concerned that this relief could inadvertently cause an increase in a customer's tax liability or prevent customers from being eligible for other income-based benefits. We suggest that the customers with larger debts, the State Water Board only provides $600 of relief this year and defer the remaining payments until January of 2022 to move the tax burden to the next year and give stakeholders in the State Water Board an opportunity to work on a solution for this problem. Last, we want the State Water Board to prioritize non-participating systems for SDWA and SB 998 enforcement. Given that this is a voluntary program, we remain extremely concerned that water systems will not participate in the debt relief program. Systems that refuse this funding and instead shut off customers should be reported to the State Water Board to the public in order to allow for other should be reported by the State Water Board to the public in order to allow for other providers of drinking water systems to be able to assist. The State Water Board should prioritize any and all potential enforcement actions that could be taken against these systems, including enforcement of shutoff protections included as part of SB 998. Last, we would also like to see the State Water Board prioritize these systems for consolidation into larger systems should they be eligible. You'll find these and additional concerns and suggestions in our forthcoming comment letter.
Great, thank you, Brittany. Oh, sorry, thank you, Natalie. And I think next slide. Yeah, and that's the conclusion of our presentation. We'll open it up for, I believe, questions and comments. Or if Uriel, would you like to add anything?
Great, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
We also have enough time if Uriel, if you would like to share your comment now with at the tail end of this panel, you're welcome to do so.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry, didn't know if I was allowed to go unmute. Good morning, State Water Board members and staff. This is Uriel Saldivar with the Community Water Center, and we really appreciate your consideration of these comments as you're finalizing the draft California Water and Wastewater Arrearages Program guidelines. We see the implementation of this program is incredibly vital to address drinking water affordability issues that communities across California have experienced because of the pandemic. And we're going to be submitting our formal written comments by tomorrow's deadline. But still, we wanted to take a moment today just to register our support for specific provisions and elevate some items of concern/interest. For WAP to be successful and provide relief, we view that the program should be equitable, timely, and efficient. And in particular, we strongly support the provisions in Section B of the program requirements, such as requiring water systems to waive customer late fees for arrearages accrued during the pandemic, requiring the funding to be credited to accounts within 60 days, auto enrollment of customers into payment plans, and also prohibit consumer debt reporting. We believe these measures are reasonable conditions for funding participating water systems and provide most customers the efficient relief. And there are some other additional items that we wanted some additional clarity or have some suggestions on implementation, and we echo the points made earlier by our colleagues at Land and Leadership Council and Tim as well. And I just wanted to specifically highlight that the funding prioritization, if funds are insufficient, to be aimed for low-income individuals. And in particular, we have a question of how the water board will gather data on low-income households if that data isn't already being collected. Just thanks for the opportunity to comment on the guidelines, and we appreciate the hard work that you have put into this program. And we welcome any further conversation with the water board members or staff to discuss these priorities.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you, panelists. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Water Association and Utility panels next. So we'll restart that clock there. And we have about 5 folks that are present. We do have more that are confirmed that I don't see in the queue in Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce. We do have Cindy Tuck with the Association of California Water Agencies, Daniel Blasett with California Municipal Utilities Association, Jennifer Capitolo with California Water Association, Rich Stevenson with Sweetwater Authority, and Tim Worley with California Association of Mutual Water Companies and California Nevada Section America Water Works Association. I'll go ahead and introduce those panelists, and if anyone else joins during the time, they can introduce themselves too. So welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. This is Tim Worley. I believe we agreed that I would go first, so I'll be followed by my colleagues. Thank you, Board Member Firestone. Again, my name is Tim Worley. As a consultant, I help to support the 2 organizations you mentioned, California Nevada section of the American Water Works Association, which counts every type and size of water provider among its membership, from very small to very large. And I also work with the California Association of Mutual Water Companies, or Cal Mutuals, which supports the state's small and very small private water systems, many of which serve disadvantaged communities. The members of both organizations hold diverse opinions about the program we're discussing. So what I say is not necessarily a unanimous view, but I know it is unanimously appreciated that you consult with us. So thank you again, Board Member Firestone, Deputy Directors Lawden and Polhemus, for including a panel representing the water providers. We will try not to repeat each other's comments too much. In the short amount of time we have tried to coordinate our comments somewhat. So other panelists will speak to several specific policy issues. My comments are a bit more general. First, it is important to note that just as many utility customers were affected by the loss of income, so were the water providers. We should keep in mind that water providers depend on customers paying for service to remain solvent, and they need to have their financial health restored too. In a perfectly fair world, it might be possible to provide aid equitably according to the true need, but government programs never really achieve that lofty ideal. We know that people and families were affected differently. Some have savings, some don't. Some lost income, some didn't. Well, in the same way, water systems have also been affected differently. Some have more financial reserves to fall back on in emergencies and more resources to work the government programs to their benefit. This is just a fact of life, but worth remembering. My second general comment is about the complicated nature of the program. I was not able to attend the recent webinar, but the Q&A document that came out of it demonstrate how many questions can come up, often about very granular details. The survey and the program guidelines are new, they're very detailed, and they need to work across a huge variety of different situations. So they're necessarily quite complicated. All systems, all kinds of systems will need assistance. So it sounds like you're trying, but get ready. AWWA and Cal Mutuals appreciate the state's commitment to providing technical assistance in completing the arrearage survey and in submitting applications for available funds. We would like to reinforce the importance of this assistance, particularly for small systems whose technical, managerial, and financial resources are often very limited. It is critical that assistance continue to be robust and easy to access. We have heard from our members that many of our systems are on a fence about whether to participate and would like to share a few thoughts on why a water system might choose not to participate. I don't know everything that will go into this individual's decision, but I would like to suggest a few factors that I'm hearing why some agencies may choose to opt out. One, customer need. A customer does not have to demonstrate any financial need. So this cuts both ways. Some agencies say they have customers that definitely have the ability to pay, but just won't. I'm aware of some sentiment that certain customers, undoubtedly a very small minority, are trying to game the system and get a free government handout they do not need. At the same time, many water agencies do not want to collect and then have to protect new data showing need, especially if it's sensitive personal identification and income data. Two, different approaches. Some agencies already have robust programs to collect arrearages or debts, ranging from effective payment plans already in place to the extreme of filing liens against the property. They may prefer to use the tools they already have without getting into a new program with difficult administrative requirements. Three, red tape. For some water providers, the requirements for participating may stack up to become a real barrier, some of which my fellow panelists may discuss in further detail. Penalizing small systems that opt out may further exacerbate their sometimes precarious situation. Four, taxation. Uncertainty about the tax implications of this program is a big deal. From a mutual water company perspective, it could amount to being taxed twice, negating the whole benefit of the arrearage payment. Since the state of California has not recognized mutual water companies as tax-exempt organizations, the company could be taxed on the money. And if the benefit goes to the customers, who are all shareholders in the company, the individual customer may be taxed on income, potentially paying twice on the same money. We hope this is not the case, but really don't have answers at this point. So those are a few issues you may want to consider as you finalize this program. Overall, I do want to end on a very positive note and recognize the amount of thought and hard work that has been put into creating a large and complex program in a very short amount of time. Your staff deserves tremendous credit for that. I will stop there and leave time for more insights from my very learned colleagues. Again, we appreciate this opportunity. I believe our next panelist is Danielle Blassett-Hayden with the California Municipal Utilities Association. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tim, so much. I really appreciate it. My name is Danielle Blassett-Hayden. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the California Municipal Utilities Association. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and offer our thoughts on the draft guidelines. First, I want to say thank you to the board and staff for working so hard to get the California Water and Wastewater Arrearage Payment Program off the ground. As an organization that actively advocated for the funding and a distribution process that would be fast, efficient, and equitable, it is great to see the program being implemented so quickly. This program has multiple benefits for water systems and their customers, but most importantly and acutely, it helps customers to more successfully emerge from the financial impacts of the pandemic by reducing and hopefully eliminating past due utility debt during the COVID-19 arrearage period. We are grateful for the legislature, in particular the Senate and administration, working together to make this program a reality. As such, it is critical the implementation is consistent with the statute and legislative intent. Which brings me to the draft guidelines. While we have comments in a number of areas that will be outlined in our comment letter, today I will highlight 2 issues while my colleagues will address other aspects of the guidelines that are important to CMUA and its members. First is the issue of payment plans and the proposed language in the guidelines that would require water systems to auto-enroll customers in plans to help address any remaining debt. In the enabling legislation, in the Health and Safety Code, it says a community water system shall provide customers with arrearages accrued during the COVID-19 pandemic relief period a notice that they may enter into a payment plan and that they have 30 days from the date of the notice to enroll in the payment plan. And then it goes on to say that the payment plan has to conform with SB 998 requirements, and a water system cannot continue water service or discontinue water service to a customer that remains current on the payment plan. This statute clearly indicates that the water system must offer a payment plan, but not a requirement to auto-enroll customers in a plan of at least 12 months with an opt-out provision. Also, this offer can be made by a water system anytime after the statute was enacted, not only after the distribution of benefits to customers. This is the legislature's intent, and it is inappropriate for the water board to exceed their statutory authority by requiring auto-enrollment. In addition to that aspect of the concern, critical to the successful completion of a payment plan is communication between the water system and the customer. Auto-enrollment likely forgoes this opportunity. Water systems want to proactively connect with their customer when they have a delinquent balance so they can discuss options and find the best payment plan for the customer. It does not reduce administrative resources and could actually increase them for changing processing and billing software and other aspects of such a program. Auto-enrollment may also cause confusion if a water system auto-enrolls a customer and suddenly they have different payment terms that the customer had no role in determining whether it worked for them. This is magnified if they have already been placed on a payment plan by the water system. And it may actually mean that more customers default on their plans. Further, there could be legal issues because water systems often have their customers sign an agreement to enter into the payment plan. Second issue is the cross-cutter requirements. The draft guidelines discuss these requirements and say that miscellaneous state laws apply to funding provided by state agencies, and the recipient must comply with or not be prohibited from receiving funding under a number of different statutes. As this is a direct customer relief program using federal funds and water systems are only a pass-through, we don't feel it's appropriate to include these cross-cutter requirements and encourage the State Water Board to review options for reducing or eliminating these requirements. This could also disproportionately affect small systems, and so we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible to get this funding out the door. I really appreciate the opportunity to provide comments today. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the panel. And I believe that Cindy Tuck from Aqua is going next. Cindy, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Danielle. And good morning, members of the board and staff. Cindy Tuck with the Association of California Water Agencies. We, of course, represent public water agencies. Want to start by thanking the board and the staff for making this a top priority and for acting so quickly. We also appreciate the 2 webinars, which were fantastic, and all the resources, Q&A documents, et cetera, that staff has made available to help community water systems. This morning, I'm going to provide 3 comments, and I'll be glad to answer questions also. So the first comment has to do with the prioritization of customers, specifically the recommended tiers on pages 10 and 11. And I want to note we support this proposed approach that staff has of the recommended tiers. It's important for systems, and Leslie Lawden noted this, to have flexibility based on their facts to make this work. You know, that every situation is different with the arrearages. So we support the recommended tier approach. We note that an approach with mandatory tiers that prioritized low-income customers wouldn't track with the statute. The statute, AB 148, which is brand new, requires that the systems prioritize residential water customers and customers with the largest arrearages. We think the staff has come up with a good approach here with the recommended tiers as they're written. The second comment relates to income data. And here we have a significant concern, but we're suggesting an alternative way to get at the same goal. So as background on this, at page 12 of the draft guidelines, in the middle of the page, there's a good proposal to require water systems to refer customers with remaining balances after the program funds are credited to the LIWAP program. That's the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program administered by the Department of Community Services and Development. And the staff's concept is that these customers would be referred and learn about other low-income assistance programs. We think the proposal for referral is a good idea. The problem, as we see it, is that the draft guidelines would go further to propose that community water systems with more than 3,300 connections would be required to obtain customer income data from the CARES program. That's, from the electric and gas utilities such as PG&E, Southern California Edison. This is customer income information, or by asking the customers to self-identify a low income status. And there are several problems with this approach. We're going to submit a comment letter, of course, by the deadline tomorrow. But 3 of the concerns are, 1, this isn't authorized by AB 148. There's nothing about income data or CARES program, et cetera, in the statute. There is some of that proposed in SB 222. That's a bill that's pending relative to low income water assistance, but it is not in the statute for the arrearages program. Another concern is it would slow down implementation. And third, it's not necessary. What we're recommending as an alternative or a better approach is that the law, AB 148, does require a notice relative to payment plans. And we suggest that the guidelines say that in that notice, the systems should, make it, or they should make it clear that there are other programs available that may have money available for low-income households, and then provide clear information on how the systems can connect to those programs. And we're glad to help on the writing of that. So that's the second comment. The last comment, which I'll provide now, relates to the word forgiveness in the draft guidelines, and that appears on page 4 and on page 11. And the statute, AB 148, does not use the term forgiveness. It instead talks about having bill credits. So we suggest in the 2 places that it appears in the draft guidelines, using the term bill credits. And the reason why we suggest that is that in this program, the debt is not being forgiven. It's being covered, and it's being covered with part of California's share of the American Rescue Plan dollars. So we think bill credit is truer to what's actually happening and is a simple change to the draft guidelines. So that concludes my comments. Again, thanks to the board and the staff for the amazing work on this program so quickly. We really appreciate that. And by the way, we're going to do another advisory to our members to say, get those surveys in by the deadline. We've already done a couple of those. We're going to do another one today. So with that, I conclude my comments, and I'm glad to answer questions. And I believe the next panelist is Jennifer Capitola with California Water Association.
Thanks, Cindy. Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Capitola on behalf of the California Water Association. CWA is a statewide association representing the interest of water utilities regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission, approximately 15% of the drinking water providers in the state. I want to start also by adding my thanks to the State Water Board staff for all their work on this program. Overall, CWA believes the state board has put together a straightforward program that can be administered in a timely manner and assist both water utilities and our customers in recovering from this pandemic. Today, I'm going to focus on 3 comments, and as mentioned, we'll be following up in writing by the deadline tomorrow. So I think my first comment is focused on the unknown, right? None of us know what the results of the study are going to say. So the State Water Board staff, our utilities, we don't know if you're going to have enough money or not enough money. So we've been really struggling with this when trying to formulate our comments on the guidelines. Specifically, if there is excess funding, we ask that the State Water Board consider revising the definition of commercial customers to eliminate the customers that are currently excluded. So it was included in the earlier discussion, 2 types of irrigation customers as well as industrial customers are excluded. This isn't that easy of a task because all utilities have different billing systems, and it might not be easy for them to identify just these 3 customer classes that are excluded from the program. Also, if the purpose is really to help customers and water utilities recover from the pandemic, CWA doesn't believe the customer classes is an important factor in that recovery. Further, if the results of the study show that there is excess funding or significantly less funding, we ask for a second comment period because we all may view this in a different way depending on, again, what those results of the study might be. Second, on program coordination, we've been struggling a little with how the LIWAP program and the State Water program interact with each other. Some of the eligibility requirements are different, and low-income customers have the potential to receive a greater benefit under the LIWAP program. But at the same time, it feels very irresponsible for a water utility to ever recommend someone forego assistance through the State Water Board program in favor of the LIWAP program, since the State Water Board program is going to roll out now. So we just ask that maybe we pull together a roundtable and really talk about this coordination. And I don't know if guidance can even be part of the guidelines that the State Water Board's putting together, but that feels like an area that needs some focus and a conversation. My third comment is on auto enrollment. And I'm just sharing this as background for the PUC regulated water utilities. We receive data on a regular basis from the energy utilities on customers that are enrolled in assistance programs. Prior to ever adding a customer through this data sharing program, we send a letter to those customers and we tell them that they're eligible for this assistance, and we allow them an opportunity to opt out. The state board may want to consider an opt-out option for customers. And I say this specifically because of my last point is about customer tax liability. So the fourth one, if we're going to automatically enroll folks in payment programs, or we're automatically going to apply this assistance to their bills, and then we're going to send them a 1099 saying that they have to pay taxes on it, and they never had the option to opt out, that just seems concerning. So I think that's something else that we should talk through. So, and then again, my fourth comment is really focused on this issue of needing to issue 1099s. And I know the State Water Board and Department of Finance are trying to request guidance from the federal government. We've put together a team in Washington, D.C. with our sister organization, as well as some folks that have connections in Washington, D.C. to really push to get some timely guidance on this issue. And I'm going to end there because I was able to ask a couple of folks to join us today to specifically talk about this tax issue. So after Sweetwater Authority, there's an attorney as well as a woman, Emily, from Washington, D.C., who can share from the public Government Finance Officers Association's perspective. So I'm going to hand it over to Rich, and then I know, Emily, you have a time constraint, so maybe we can go Rich, Emily, and then to Rob, the tax attorney.
Okay, thank you. And I'll try to be as quick and brief as possible here. My name is Rich Stevenson. I'm the Director of Finance for the Sweetwater Authority. Appreciate the time today to speak as a public water agency. And again, just to reiterate all the work the State Water Board has put into this, it's such a heavy lift in such a quick amount of time. These comments may be similar to other water agencies, and so it's a little awkward for me as the only water agency representative here, because I don't want to be seen as representative, because operations do vary so widely. Sweetwater Authority is a JPA made up of the South Bay Irrigation District and City of National City, just south of the city of San Diego. Largely a community of color. We have approximately 30,000 connections, mostly all residential or commercial. We have usually $50 million in revenues and currently about $950,000 in arrearages. Sweetwater has submitted our survey. We did it as early as possible. We've turned in the tax forms too. We weren't entirely sure if it was going to be used as an allocation or method or just a place in line. So we wanted to get that done as soon as possible. We are fortunate enough to have a big enough computerized system to easily provide the data required. The funding will be very helpful for us because we feel like we have a relatively large volume of arrearages. And Sweetwater is not a part of, a lot of agencies are not a part of a city or county that have received other COVID funding, and we have not had much luck coordinating with our county partners in getting some of their funding. And just another point for us is we do have a large arrearage balance, but our arrearage balance does continue to grow even after that June 15th cutoff date. So we will have continued challenges with those balances. So we will be able to comply with these requirements to receive the funding. So we definitely are going to be applying for them. I'm going to hold off on any of my tax implication comments and save that for the others. But at a minimum, it would be nice to have some definitive analysis and procedures on what those 1099 procedures need to be. One quick comment on the tiered allocation approach. Sometimes the largest residential customers are not the ones that may mostly be needing of relief. Large single-family residential arrearages are typically due to landscape irrigation. And so smaller single-family residential bills and arrearages, those may be the ones that maybe are struggling the most. In addition, multifamily apartments do have access to other housing-related funding sources. Again, to reiterate what Aqua had said, if there are additional insufficient funds for arrearages, Sweetwater really just isn't set up to be engaged in customers to know what their income levels are to allocate a portion of those arrearages. And so it is good that it's at a maybe just offer, instead of allocating at low income, just informing customers there are other sources. And then our final and our probably most biggest comment are on the payment plans. There were a couple of other comments for these. it would be our suggestion that these payment plans are opt-in for customers, that they are notified of the payment plans and they're allowed to opt into them. For us to administer a large number of payment plans and administer keeping customers current on their current water bills would be a very difficult task administratively. But in addition, it's going to be very difficult for customers who have not had personal engagement with the agency to understand what those payment plans are about and what what they are required to do. So we would offer an opt-in approach. Our disconnection process really is a tool to engage customers. And so with our disconnection process, we may have a large number we're disconnecting, but at the end of the day, we rarely turn customers off, because at that point we are able to engage with them and put in place an effective payment plan. So we would be looking at an opt-in instead of a auto enrollment on those payment plans. Our governing board is committed to getting customers in service. We have been authorized by our board to offer payment plans up to 2 years. It's just, we think with that opt-in, it would be a better, more effective way to engage customers in their payment plans. Go ahead and turn it over. Sorry for the quick comments, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to the next speaker. I believe that was Emily. Thanks, Emily.
Hi, Rich. Thank you for that. And thank you all for having me here. So Emily Brock, I'm what we call the federal liaison for the Government Finance Officers Association. Our organization represents over 21,000 finance officers in Washington, D.C. And so a lot of our members, actually a significant portion of our members are in California, and a significant portion of those are public utilities. So we feel very comfortable in the water conversation, but the 1099 issue is even broader than that right now, as you can imagine, specifically when it comes to dealing with the arrearages and being able to assess the arrearages and spend the money on the arrearages. We had been working, of course, with the CARES Act and the Supplemental Act that happened at the end of last year. We're glad to see the setup of the LIWA program, but we did realize that there was a lot of water that was left behind in the past 2 iterations of the stimulus programs. This time around in ARPA, we were able to have significant conversations with Treasury about allowing for them to be able to pay those arrearages. So while we were delighted to have that information, and it authorizes a fair amount of percentage of spending of the ARPA proceeds, both for prime recipients, which is the cities and counties themselves, but for also the utilities they operate, there is little guidance, if any, from the IRS on the ability to distribute those proceeds for arrearages. I wanted to let you guys know we work in a relatively large organization of what we call governmental issuers. So, the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, AWWA, NACWA are all a part of our coalition. And we've recently dispatched an email to the IRS asking them for additional information on remaining questions. So, of course, we have relationships within the IRS, and we've emailed them a number of times to ask them about the 1099, whether or not income from ARPA will qualify as income to households. And their very first response was to send me back, the information about ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And that's helpful because in ERAP, income that's provided as income to households is not taxed. So therefore 1099s are not required. So they were able to answer that question. However, when we said, is ERAP going to be identical to ARPA? They said, we can't answer that for now. So we've stepped up our efforts. We are sending in a letter, just a little bit about our letter. We're appealing, of course, households receiving the assistance must consider themselves at risk of additional tax liability and or a decrease in income-based benefits. That's a key concern. And additionally, of course, because of who we are, we needed to make sure we noted that requiring 1099s would needlessly raise complicated tax administration issues like the allocation of the value of assistance to multifamily households and the issuance of information returns to customers without a known Social Security or taxpayer identification number, which is another challenge altogether. The IRS, I would say, works at its own speed, which isn't the speed of everyone else. We would prefer, of course, to have this information sooner, of course, because ARPA plans and the interim reports are being requested by Treasury right now. So therefore, I guess that what that means is the prime recipients have to report how they're spending their proceeds now. And if there is a 1099 requirement, then that, of course, will slow down the spending, which isn't necessarily what this administration wants. So we're trying to make sure to leverage the two parties, that is the Treasury and the IRS, to get this information. But what GFOA has discussed with our members is, if at all possible, to distribute 1099s if they can, and try to prepare for the circumstance where it is taxable. But hopefully, by the communication that we received about the ERAP program, we are hoping, of course, for the alternative. And as soon as we get this information, of course, we'll be dispatching that through the coalition. But the letter has been received by the IRS as of this morning. Thanks again for having me. I hope that was helpful. And certainly we'll be staying in touch with the California Water Association as that develops.
Thank you, Emily. I think we have one more person on your panel. Robert Wood has joined us. So Robert, if you want to speak.
Thank you. How do you do, everyone? My name is Rob Wood. I'm a tax lawyer. I don't have a lot more. I think what Emily Brock said was important, and sort of speaking the language of tax. I have only known about this issue for a couple of days. I don't have significant comments other than to say that I would hope that it would be possible, and I still believe it is possible, for us to sort of individually or collectively reach the conclusion that customers don't need to receive 1099s from utilities if funds are allocated to them to essentially pay their bill. So we don't have any formal guidance. I mean, I write a lot of tax opinions. I have floated the idea of writing a tax opinion on these issues, which I expected I could do. I think getting formal guidance in the form of a private letter ruling from the IRS, I've also done a lot of that. It's a time-consuming process. As Emily said, the IRS works at its own pace. So I'm and the private letter ruling process, it's kind of counterintuitive in my experience. If it's sort of a questionable point and it's really, you really need an answer, those are hard to get. And yet, if it's a really obvious answer where you kind of don't need to get formal guidance, those are the ones you can get. So they're very kind of stingy with how they hand out private letter rulings. But I think for penalty protection purposes, which is what I guess if a utility is receiving money and then applying it to accounts, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I know how to turn this off. I apologize. I'm in my office today, which you can, my home office is as messy as my office. It's actually worse now. But now I don't know how to work the phones at my office. So penalty protection purposes, you want to have something reliable that, and if it's not possible to get binding guidance from the IRS, something that's less than binding, but it sort of says you're okay, you don't have to sort of treat this as income and penalize people, it would be best. A sort of a tax opinion in the file would protect you from assertion of penalties about failing to issue a 1099. I guess just a word on 1099s in general, because I see a lot of these kinds of reporting issues. I shouldn't say these kind, this is a highly unusual one. But reporting issues, the knee-jerk reaction of any issuer of payments, I'm afraid, is something the IRS likes, which is issue a 1099 if anything moves. And so I know the idea has been floated by some members about making sure that all the allocations of payments are under $600, which is the normal threshold. So if it's all $599, how could you be criticized?
But of course, if a customer had a bill of $700 and only $599 was paid, they could be upset if they still have to pay anything. It's sort of and I also think, as somebody who's had to defend a lot of things before the IRS, trying to kind of get around the rules is not something they like. So if you had thousands of $599 payments, it looks terrible, in my opinion. That's so there's no easy answer here, except I think it has to be, I think there's a way to get to the point where nobody has to be reporting this as income, which, as I think Emily Brock said, is not only an income tax issue, but may impact other things, benefits and so on. So it really is a tough one. Just one parting comment, apart from the hundreds of pages of regulations about 1099 issuances and when you have to do it and so on, which I think is another reason that many people just default to, issue it for payments. And these are really payments on behalf of someone. So it's a little different, but there is something called the general welfare exception, which is not in the Internal Revenue Code. The IRS uses it. Has used it for various kinds of relief payments in the past. It's been used a lot in the last decade or so for payments to Native Americans and Native American tribes. So it is something that in the general welfare exception is essentially if it's a payment that's supposed to promote the general welfare, and there's some other requirements, but that's kind of a way of not having income, even though something looks like it's income. Anyway, I'll pause and say, I'm sorry, I'm not further along in my thoughts, but I still think that we should be, I would hope and believe we should be able to solve this tax problem, because it really shouldn't be a problem, I think, for any of the customers, and therefore also not for us.
I have a question, Mr. Wood. Thank you for that. And I think we very much share that concern and hope that this gets resolved quickly. There was some suggestion from some groups that maybe if for those that have arrearages over 600, that it might make sense to split up the credits between this year and after January. And not that you can give tax advice maybe on this phone call, but can you speak to whether there's something worth looking into there?
Yeah, no, I think there isn't. And maybe this sounds like splitting hairs, but I view that as somewhat different than having thousands and thousands of $599 applications. And I actually think that's kind of a clever idea, but because it's so clever, I think it looks bad. I think your point, Ms. Firestone, about splitting into 2 years, I think that's more sophisticated, and I also don't think it looks bad. So I think the answer is, that could work. I'm hoping for a more universal fix, but yes, I think you're right, that can work.
Great, thank you to both panelists, or to both panels, the water providers and the environmental justice community panel. We do have one public commenter that we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for. And then after that, we're going to transition over to Board Member Firestone to lead a discussion with any board members, and then we'll adjourn. So we do have one commenter, Antonio Alfaro from Valley Water. If you want to unmute yourself and share your comment, you can.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. Antonio Alfaro here with Valley Water. I'm a government relations manager with the agency. So we have a couple comments specific to Valley Water. Valley Water is a community water system that provides water both as treated drinking water as a wholesaler to our 13 water retailers, but also to over 4,100 residential groundwater wells that together supply water to 2 million people. The well owners in Santa Clara County are either metered or they are required to pay a flat fee for the water supplied and conveyed through the aquifers by our agency. During the COVID period, Valley Water has accumulated about 250 residential groundwater well customer accounts that are in arrears. These accounts serve residents that depend on water resupply like any other household, and we are requesting that the guidelines change to allow the community water systems to submit such charges for reimbursement. We also suggest removing the cross-cutter requirements that are currently unrelated to the arrearages. While we understand that the cross-cutters and state-funded grant programs are common, they are inappropriate for this program, which is intended to assist residents who are struggling to make utility bill payments. Penalizing residents for the actions of the water provider seems inappropriate. The purpose of the program is to help people in need and not enforce other state policy goals. With that, we'd like to thank the State Water Board, the administration, and the legislature for helping people pay their water service related debts during this COVID period. And we thank you for the opportunity to comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Antonio. Well, there are no other public commenters in my queue. I think we've covered them all here. So I'm going to hand that back over to you, Board Member Firestone, for the discussion with the board members. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Great. So I wanted to open it up to board members, see if there's issues we want to discuss. I think, again, this is moving very quickly. So while we will get written comments by tomorrow, I think to the extent that we heard issues here today that we want to provide some comments or direction on to staff, we should be doing that. I'll flag a couple things and see if other board members have other issues they want to discuss. I heard a lot. One real concern I have fundamentally is that this is a voluntary program of water systems to have to be able to step up and administer this program in order to benefit their customers. And I think we heard some potential reasons from Mr. Worley on why systems may not participate. I would really like us to be utilizing our various communications resources to do more targeted outreach, not just the work that our Division of Drinking Water is doing, but also through our communications resources around to media and community groups and elected leaders in those areas that have not responded or are indicating that they have customer debt but are not going to participate. I think we really need to be doing everything we can to make sure these benefits get to folks that need it. And at the end of the day, that's up to water systems to step up and help their customers. So that's sort of an overall concern I want us to be looking at as we implement the program. In terms of guidelines, things that I heard that I thought we should touch on if other board members and other board members have others. I heard concerns around navigating this issue of teeter plans and when debt is transferred to third parties with particularly county tax rolls. So there's a suggestion around encouraging water systems to transfer funds so that they don't to those third parties or credit on the tax rolls so they don't result in a lien if it's not paid. And maybe where that's not feasible, use a bill credit. And maybe I'll just, as I go through, because there's a few of these, I'll just see, do other board members have thoughts on that issue? Not seeing any. I'll keep going then. All right. I mean, I certainly do feel like we should be trying to avoid liens going on properties. That's the purpose of this. And I think the issue is that that may not be feasible and all, for a lot of folks, for a lot of systems to be able to do that. But to the extent that it is, given that they've transferred the charge over there, if they can transfer the credit, that would be better than a bill credit. And where that can't be done, offering the bill credit seems like a good creative way to address it. Definitely, I think a huge issue we heard was on tax burdens. So, I think clearly that's something that we would like the IRS to be weighing in on, that we need guidance on. I do, as we discussed, I think there's some creative options, like at least allowing water systems or recommending water systems to look at how they might, break up the timing of credits. So I'd like us to look at that in terms of our guidance. I think it's a really serious issue. Any board member thoughts on that one?
I concur. I agree.
Yeah, great. All right, keep going. Let's see, auto enrollment. So this is an issue I think we heard from a number of folks. First of all, I'll just say this is interesting because on one hand, whether you participate in this program or not, this requirement of payment plans is required of all water systems, which is in the legislation. And hopefully the funding that we have will cover 100% of the debt for those that are participating. So this wouldn't be an issue for systems that are participating in the program. There is the problem, and I think we've heard this from water systems, that this program only covers debt between those dates, the COVID emergency dates. And so folks that either had debt from before or after that date aren't currently eligible under the legislation for credits here. And that's where the LIWAP program, I think, is able to provide more flexible benefits to cover that timing from the federal side. Of course, that one's really limited to a very specific, relatively small definition of low income and citizens, and a number of other restrictions. So for payment plans, the way that it works is water systems are going to have to be communicating with customers no matter what. And so with that, they're going to have to be communicating terms. There's going to be that customer touch. Certainly what we've seen and, throughout these sorts of programs, and this isn't an area that the water board does, but in other programs, that the more barriers to entry, the more that folks aren't able to get benefits that they are otherwise eligible for. And so allowing an opt-out rather than an opt-in, I think, would allow this to reach a far greater population. And I do think that's the intent of this program, is to help customers avoid shutoffs and be able to break up payments. So this way, allowing folks to be able to opt out of a program and allowing water systems to offer more flexible plans. So I think there could be, we should make sure there's that flexibility in the guidelines for water systems to really offer what's appropriate, offer to do to accommodate flexibility, but putting one more barrier to allowing folks to participate in programs by requiring them to opt in seems like, yet again, another barrier that could be avoided. So that's, I think I heard a lot of areas that maybe we could improve on providing flexibility, making clear that you can opt out. But I'm hopeful we can navigate how to do that and provide that flexibility while still reducing that barrier to entry and making sure that we can avoid having to have water systems start the shutoff process before they would otherwise need to.
I just want to follow up on that. I think I agree with you in principle, but I'm concerned about the complexity and the reality of dealing with thousands of water systems and their existing debt payment programs that they have in place, and just the comments about tailoring that touch point with customers and tailoring the debt to their needs and those payment plans. And so I think it's a good idea, but I appreciate your comments about flexibility and thinking I'll want to see the written comments and thinking through a bit more, what type of flexibility makes the most sense here, and not wanting to get too ahead of ourselves, given that we just do have a very short time frame. So it's definitely worth thinking about some more supportive of the concept, but again, just want to make sure we're thinking through all the different possible scenarios that might come up.
Great. Any other thoughts from board members?
I think you handled it well, Board Member Firestone. I learned a lot today, but overall, I'm feeling like we're moving in the positive direction, but there are some significant questions that have been raised today, and I appreciate the dialogue and just look forward. I'd like to hear from staff on some of these issues, in particular, the tax implications and some of your suggestions, and then just look forward to the comments and further briefings.
Great. Board Member Morgan, do you have more?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I concur, and just wanted to thank staff and for all of their hard work of bringing this, to us today. I know that this has been really fast moving. A lot of, time, effort, and energy has gone into developing the program to this point in time. And then also thank everyone for coming today to provide the comments that they did. It's a lot for us and for staff to take in to think about and process. And then looking forward to seeing the written comments that come in tomorrow, and then circling back with staff and seeing how do we, like has been said, provide the flexibilities where we can in the areas of the comments and concerns that have been brought up. And to make sure that this program is successful. That's the goal. Great.
Well, I guess before we end some of this discussion, I also wanted to just recognize that we don't yet have the data from the surveys. We really need folks to fill that out. But as we get that and are able to incorporate that into final guidelines, we should have then a sense of whether this program can cover 100% of the drinking water debt. I think we heard from folks on ways to, we might want to look at adapting if we do have additional funding left. But I think the big thing will be looking at, and the direction from the legislature is to be looking at how that can and will support wastewater debt if we do have additional funds left. So that will be a second process that we'll go through. And again, look forward to getting the written comments, getting those surveys in. Really hope everyone can make a really strong push to allow us to do that. Comments are due, I believe, by noon tomorrow. Although you can correct me if I'm wrong. Just again, want to thank everyone for attending the workshop and for everyone that's working on the comments and the survey, and this workshop's now concluded. Thank you.
Yeah, Board Member Fosman, I'll just echo that the comment letters on the guidelines are due at noon tomorrow, Friday, 9/10, and that the survey will be open until 5 p.m. tomorrow. So 2 different deadlines, but complete them both today. How's that?
Exactly. Get that in. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.